The card game Bohnanza has been in print continuously since its debut in 1997, and while designer Uwe Rosenberg might be better known today for Agricola, Bohnanza remains his best-selling game of all time. And it's understandable why, because the game is very straightforward, it allows lots of players to play at once, it is very interactive, and it's got a simple concept of you being a bean farmer who is going to plant and harvest beans to try to earn more coins than anyone else. Here's how that works. In most versions of Bohnanza, you have to imagine two fields in front of each player, whereas in the 25th anniversary edition, you get this card that depicts the two fields in which you will plant beans of separate types. Yes, you must specialize in each field with one type of bean. You can't just place everything in one field. You have to imagine these beans require a certain mixture of fertilizer and water and sun and all that, and this requires something else, so you have to specialize. And as you place cards in the field, you will earn coins based on the beanometer of the particular type of bean that you are planting. So with 3 chili beans, I get a coin. With 2 black-eyed beans, I get a coin. So you want to plant as many as possible, and you want to keep planting those types of beans because you get a better rate the further you go along. 2 more cards, well, that's another coin. But 1 more card gets me a coin now, and I get 3 coins. So it's 2 card, 2 card, 1 card. So you want to specialize. So chili, 6 cards gets me 2 coins. 8 cards gets me 3 coins. You want to keep going and specializing in a particular type of bean. Unfortunately, your planting plans will be complicated by the main hook of Bohnanza, the thing that drives all of the activity in the game, and that is the rule that you cannot sort cards in your hand. Every time you get new cards, they go at the back of your hand, so you'll have cards from old to new, and they will be a variety of bean types, not the things that you are specializing in your fields. And very importantly, at the start of your turn, you must plant the card that's at the front of your hand. And you may plant the second one, but you have to plant the first. And I really want to plant this chili bean because that will be my 9th chili bean. It will get me a coin just from this 1 card. But I have a blue bean that I must plant first, which means I must harvest one of my fields to make room for it, which means I don't maximize the value of that type of bean. So what am I going to do? Well, thankfully, in the game, you can trade cards on another player's turn. Everyone can trade with them, and they can trade with everyone. This is one of the things I really like about Bohnanza. Everyone gets to be the star of the game. And for new players, you get to be the focus of attention. Everyone is trying to make trades with you. It can be a little overwhelming, depending upon how loud people are, but you get to be the focus, the star of the game. And you can trade cards from anywhere in your hand. So hopefully someone else is collecting blue beans, and I can say to them, I got a blue bean for you. You got a black-eyed bean? I'd love to make a trade. All right, maybe we can do that. 1 card for 1 card. You can trade from anywhere in your hand while you must plant only from the front. So I can trade blue bean for black-eyed bean. 1-to-1. It's a fair trade, right? Except I'm getting a coin, and they may not be getting a coin based on the beanometer here for blue beans. So instead of 1-to-1, it's really like 1-to-0. I'm getting a coin and they're not. So can I give them something else? Well, in fact, I've got 2 blue beans in my hand. So how about 2 for 1? I'll trade you 2 blue beans for 1 black-eyed bean. Is that going to get them a coin? Maybe. Because, again, you look at the beanometer. If they have only 1 blue bean, they're still not getting a coin. I mean, can I trade them something else? Would you like a green bean? Right? Would you like 2 wax beans? You can trade anything you want from your hand, and everything that's traded is planted in fields. So if I can make a deal, I'll trade 2 blue beans, I'll get the black-eyed bean, I plant it in the field. That's maximized that field, and now I can harvest it. Because any other black-eyed beans I put in, I get no additional coins. So that's good. 2 for 1, I can do that. Or even 3 for 1, 4 for 1. I am desperate to get rid of this card, and you can actually give away cards to other players. I can just say, well, you don't have anything I need, but do you want a blue bean? I'll give it to you. Maybe you pay me back later. All right. No obligations, but there you go. So it's 1 for nothing. So it's, in a way, again, unfair trade, except I'm getting rid of something that I don't want so that I can specialize in something I do want. And in general in Bohnanza, the more that you trade, the better you will do, because cards left in your hand at the end of the game are worthless. You need to get stuff into your fields, but you can't get everything into your fields because you have to get enough cards to make them worth a coin, and ideally you want to specialize. So the more that you trade, the better that you will do. My wife is a fantastic Bohnanza player, primarily because she often doesn't care what she's getting. It feels like she's just trying to make trades, whatever she can, get rid of stuff. I'll give stuff away. I just don't want this. But then she'll get lots of stuff back from people that she's given things to, and she will win far more than you would think, especially in 6 and 7 player games. She's just trading with everyone. And if I trade with this person, and I trade with this person, I trade with this person, I trade with this person, I'm making lots of trades and getting lots of stuff in my fields, and maybe they're not. So that's what you want to do. Trade as much as possible. And Bohnanza's been on my mind for the past 10 days or so, primarily because the current United States government has imposed tariffs, increasingly higher tariffs, on goods being imported from China. Now, the U.S. administration started this a while ago with a 10% tariff on goods that are being imported from China. And then it went to 20%. And then on April 2nd, it imposed lots of tariffs called reciprocal tariffs on many different countries, with China getting a 54% tariff. And then that was raised to 104%, then 125%, 145%, and who knows what it is the time you're watching this video. It's kind of crazy. Lots of other countries had reciprocal tariffs at the same time, and then a week later, they were pulled back. They were put on hold for 90 days. We're only going to do a 10% tariff, not what we said previously. So we're really nice, aren't we? Even though we didn't have those tariffs before to begin with. So we're still adding a tariff. We're just adding less of a tariff than what we had said we would. Now, when the 54% tariff was imposed, I surveyed publishers. I sent a survey to 1,200 plus publishers on Board Game Geek's mailing list. I heard back from 150, and many of them were devastated at the idea that they would have to pay a 54% tariff because many board games are produced in China. Some are produced in Germany. There's a lot there, primarily for European publishers, but for others as well. There's a lot in the Czech Republic, right? Obviously, Czech Games Edition publishes there. Ravensburger does a lot of publishing in the Czech Republic. There are other publication sites as well, but China is the source of many board games from many publishers around the world. And they were not happy thinking that they would have to pay a 54% tariff. There was one publisher, self-publisher. Clearly this was a second job someone's doing for fun. They just want to get their creations out there. This was their second title they're releasing that they had crowdfunded. And now they were looking at the prospect of, instead of maybe making a bit of money, best case scenario, selling everything they had, they would lose $3,000. Best case scenario, because of 54% tariff that would now be applied to goods being imported. And that was when it was 54%. Now it's 145%. So that person would be losing even more. What's the alternative? Many companies have crowdfunded games, or they've just put in orders for games from Chinese manufacturers, and those games are being produced. And if they're being put on a ship after a certain deadline, then they will owe tariffs. And the cost for that could be devastating. The director of Hachette Board Games USA noted, this was, I think, when the 145% tariff was in place, that they would owe an estimated $1 million in tariffs. And that is if they cancel reprints of evergreen titles. That is, titles that you always want to have in stock because they are continually selling. Every company, not just game companies, every company relies upon evergreen titles, things that will just keep selling by word of mouth. People like them. They want to get it. They just keep selling. You want to keep those in print continually. So if they cancel reprints of evergreen titles, then they owe only $1 million. on games that would be coming in. $1 million tariffs. So the director was like, it'd be cheaper to just abandon them in China and not have any of those games for Gen Con. So it's astounding to think about. They're just gonna give up everything. It's cheaper to produce those games, just pay for them and say, bury them, get rid of them, whatever. We don't want them because it's more costly to take them in, to actually import them, paying the shipping costs, paying a 145% tariff. We're not going to make back our money selling those games at that point. And many publishers were facing situations like this, even with the 54% tariff. When I surveyed them initially, they were saying they are going to leave games in China, right? Maybe they can warehouse them for a few months. Perhaps the tariff will be gone then, and then we can bring them over. Or we just don't print. Okay? I have projects that I prepared to print. I just won't do it. Maybe I can switch my game lineup and do something else. There are a couple of independent publishers who said, I might just do print and plays for now, instead of anything else that would require components. And many of them are saying all this because there are very limited manufacturing facilities in the United States for games. That's just what the situation is right now. There was one publisher that mentioned specifically pricing of projects both in the United States and China, and the United States manufacturer would be 6 times higher in cost per copy. So that is not something you want to do if you were trying to make a living selling games, because most games will have a markup of about 5 times the manufactured cost. So we produce a game for $10 in China. Okay, we're going to pay a tariff on that $10 price. But I get the game, I'm going to sell it to a distributor for $20, and they're going to sell it to a retailer for $25. These are all average numbers, and that retailer is going to sell it for $50 to the end buyer. And why we have those jumps in prices is because everyone has to cover other costs as well. I'm paying $10 for the cost of the game itself, but I also want to pay for my salary and my employees' salaries and the building that I'm working in and insurance for the company and convention fees and all sorts of other stuff. And I'll make a little profit by selling that game for $20 to a distributor. The distributor has to make its margin. The retailer has to make its margin. So $10 cost on a game will translate to a $50 retail. And then producing in the US is going to be $60 cost. Whew. What's the retail of that game going to be? It's hard to even fathom what that's going to be because there's all sorts of other costs along the way that will probably be increasing, similar to the price of that game increasing if it's produced in the United States. And I know lots of people want to keep politics out of board games. And they say, why do you bring politics to board games? I'm going to do this. Now, half the time they're doing this when it's a topic that is not political. It's just a social or cultural issue that they don't like and don't want to talk about or think about, or they want to pretend it doesn't exist. I just don't want this in my game. That's not political, though. That's just a cultural, social thing. Okay? But here we have a political issue that will directly impact the production of games. So, time to talk about it. Again, many of the people that I surveyed just saying there is no manufacturing in the United States that would allow them to produce the games here at a similar cost. The cost would be much, much higher, or they could not produce the game in the same manner because the facilities do not exist. And I've written a lot about tariffs. I've included a lot of quotes from publishers, and many commenters just say, well, they're doing the tariffs to try to bring manufacturing back to the United States. And you can say that, but how would that actually work? Because manufacturing facilities don't pop up overnight. They will require tens or hundreds of millions of dollars of investment to buy land and equipment, to have a labor force, to contact all the people who you might be dealing with. and to actually acquire that equipment. And all of the equipment that you would get to produce those games right now would probably come from China with a 145% tariff. So the cost to establish that business would be much higher than it would have been a year ago, assuming you were even going to try that. But again, go back to that project where it was 6 times higher to produce in the United States than China. So does it even make sense to establish board game production facilities in the United States? And even if you wanted to, that would not happen overnight. China's been producing games for decades, and often when you are contacting someone about producing a game, the company that you're contacting will not necessarily produce everything themselves. They might contract work out. They're going to get plastics from this one company, and they'll get wooden bits from this other company. This other company will do cards, and they will assemble it all, package it, ship it to you. So you're dealing with this one person who has all sorts of contacts with other companies that specialize in different game parts. That does not exist in the United States. You'd be starting all of that from scratch. And the companies that exist in the United States, they don't necessarily produce all of their raw materials. They will get it from elsewhere, often from outside the United States. And if they're getting it from China, 145% tariff on that. Right? The U.S. has lots of paper producing facilities, but the paper that's produced is not often card paper because you want card stock of a particular quality with different materials in the core to make it bend properly, whatever it is. A lot of that is produced not in the United States, so you're importing it. So you can say you want to bring manufacturing back to the United States, but it's not something that happens overnight, and it's not something that someone is necessarily going to invest in if they are uncertain whether the tariffs will still be in place by the time they're actually operating. Because right now the tariffs have been kind of like a wheel of fortune. Feels like you just spin it, you'll get some number. And then you spin it the next day and you'll get another number. And right now the tariff rate for China has just been going up, except wait a minute, there was just announced an exemption for smartphones and some other computer equipment. So up to 145%, but not smartphones. They're okay. So if you had had any thought of starting a smartphone production facility in the United States, well, just wipe that out of your mind. There's no need to because the tariff is off, at least for now. Who knows what will happen in the future? It doesn't really seem to be a plan, and usually you want a plan that you can use to make long-term business decisions. Is it a responsible thing to do to start this business? Does it make sense that 5 years from now, I will be in a position to have X number of clients covering this cost in order to make me a profitable business? And it's hard to plan that far ahead if the situation is changing seemingly day by day. So it just doesn't seem like that's going to happen. For anyone who's saying, just bring manufacturing back to the US. It may seem difficult, but yeah, we should really try. We should do that. I invite you to try. Take your tens or hundreds of millions of dollars, get that funding somehow, and do it. Instead of saying it as if you could just make it happen magically, try to do it. Do some investigation. There was an article, blog post recently written by a guy that had worked with the company, Quimley's Cards and Games, I believe, where they said, yes, by golly, we're going to try to produce in the United States. And they did like a year-long experiment and like, wow, this is way more expensive than we thought. We can't even produce some of the things we thought we could produce. Just can't do it. Right? So sure, it may sound nice as a goal to say we're going to bring manufacturing back to the United States, but is it even feasible? And again, I'm talking strictly about board games here, not about every other company or industry that produces goods in the United States, in China. Every company that is producing in China is facing this idea of a 145% tariff that could just bust their business completely. Because What are you going to do? Just suddenly say, oh, we announced this thing and it was $50. Sorry, it's actually going to end up being $100, $125. How much of your customer base have you just quashed by doing that? That's, again, one of the responses that companies companies have said they will have in response to these tariffs. Maybe they crowdfunded a project. They were going to produce X number of copies in addition to try to sell those games at retail. And they're like, nope, we're just not going to do that at all. We're producing for the crowdfunding backers, maybe 10% overage to account for games that get damaged in transit or replacement parts or whatever. And that's it. We're done. Some companies just said, yeah, we're going to do crowdfunding only. And so we can better account for exactly how many people are backing us and how many we need to produce. Everything could change based on tariffs that have a stated goal that does not make sense. There's no way that you could drive manufacturing within the United States with tariffs that seem rather arbitrary and in flux all the time. And if you take a step back, you can say, why are we even caring if board games are produced in the United States? Why is that a good thing? How does that benefit people? Probably not going to benefit the publishers if they have to sell games at twice the price or higher of a game that was produced in China, right? You would need tariffs of what, 300, 400% before you could start to have a game that's produced that costs 6 times as much make sense, right? You get rid of the shipping cost. If you're a United States company producing in the United States, you reduce the need to ship goods from China to the United States. But that's only part of the cost. You would need like a 400% tariff to sort of balance out with a game that would cost 6 times as much in the US. And then again, you're looking at a retail price of $100, $125. Who knows what it is? I don't know, because it's hard to fathom going out and getting what would be a $50 game and now it's a $120 game. Does it even make sense to produce games in the United States? Why do we want this to happen? United States companies have been moving production to China for decades. Games have been produced in China for decades. And there was an interview with Larry Summers, who was in the Clinton and Obama administrations, wondering why the topic is often presented in the idea of China cheating, China being unfair with its production practices. Wages are much lower in China because the cost of living is lower compared to the United States. So that's one element that makes it cheaper. And of course, they've established facilities there and it's very efficient and they can do things in all sorts of different scales and they can do all sorts of modifications with equipment and figure out solutions to things that, again, you'd be starting from scratch if you were doing in the United States. When Board Game Geek started producing Geek Up Bits in China, our advertising manager, Chad Krijan, was dealing with the manufacturer, and we were getting sample bits for Orléans, our first game that we were doing these Geek Up Bits for, this Bakelite style bits, where the plastic with this heat imprint image in it. We license the art from the publisher, pay them for that, and make the bit. But roughly 20% of them were off-center. So off-center that it was really uncomfortable to look at. You don't want to sell that product. And Chad asked for a video of how they were doing it. And it was a person just holding the bits on like a piece of cardboard and moving it under the machine that would then apply the heat transfer of the image. And they're like, well, yeah, no wonder you're off so much. Someone just eyeballing it, trying to get it. And Chad wrote to the manufacturer, and I'm like, okay, let's see what we can do. And I think it was within a week they came back within video saying, oh, how's this going to work for us? And it was a machine that would take the plastic bits and organize them and put it under the machine, right? With laser accuracy for where it's going, boom, and the transfer is made. Within a week, I don't know if they made this equipment, bought it somewhere, just pull it from another machine or reusing something. I don't know, but they just like, okay, we did it. Solution done. Let's go. Let's manufacture. We've been doing it for, I think, a decade now at this point. It's kind of amazing. That works, right? Companies moved to China because they were going to be able to produce goods for less. And for some reason, the current U.S. administration views that as something that's wrong. We are importing more goods from China than we are exporting. Therefore, it's unfair, and we need to have a reciprocal tariff to try to even out those two numbers. Why? Why? Why does that make sense at all? I mean, first off, you're comparing only the values of traded goods, not traded services. If you look at services, China imports more U.S. services than the United States imports from China. So we have a trade surplus in that regard. We have a trade deficit for goods. But so what? Why does that matter? They're manufacturers producing things. Here's the price. And we say, okay, write them a check. Send it over. Of course, we don't write them a check anymore. All electronic transfer. There we go. We transfer money and we get the thing that we want at the price that they told us it would cost. That's how business is done, right? You go back to Bohnanza. I'm going to make a trade. Is it 1-to-1? Is it necessarily 1-to-1? Is it 1-to-0? Is it 4-to-1? What's fair between us traders? It depends upon what works for both of us. What are we satisfied with? Maybe I'm satisfied with giving a card and the promise of the future that you'll give me something back. You may never get the chance to do it. You may never get a card that lines up with what I'm collecting. And so that promise falls apart. All right? I had to be satisfied with that promise. I chose to do that I was okay with that. But the alternative was sitting on this card and being forced to plan it when I didn't want to. So it was worth it. Or I make a 4-to-1 trade because I get the thing that I really need and use it. Get that extra coin. They get stuff as well. And we all move on. We all profit by trading heavily with one another. It allows us to specialize in what we're good at. So the United States moved away from manufacturing. Manufacturing went to other countries with lower cost, and we specialized in services. And now we have service trade surpluses with multiple nations because the services we provide are better than what they can get elsewhere. And might get a higher dollar amount for this service that we're providing because it's of higher importance or just a bigger project than getting things for a dollar store. So collectively, thousands of companies have made that decision to manufacture in China or Vietnam or elsewhere in Southeast Asia or elsewhere in general because it was more cost efficient for what they're trying to do. I mean, there's all sorts of reasons why you can look at why this has happened. I mean, a big part of it, from my perspective, again, diving into politics here, is the intense focus on corporations on shareholder payouts, rather than reinvestment in the company to drive long-term growth within that company. We're just looking for the payout every quarter. We want to hit those numbers. Got to have successful quarters all the time, which means we're looking very short term. And that seems kind of like equivalent to what the current U.S. administration is doing. Very short-term benefits. Did we win today? Or did we make the right thing, right decision? We won. We won. There's no long-term planning for what we want to achieve and then steps to make that happen. If we want to have an industry that will be manufactured in the United States, typically you're going to have a tariff only against that product, whatever it is you're trying to support. And then you might have tax advantages or benefits or granted land or whatever it is for a business that is going to produce that product. Typically, tariffs are done in a very minimal way to protect a burgeoning business within a country. That's historically how tariffs have been used. So that business grows over time, and now it can face competition against other countries on a level playing field, even field. All right, we're going to build that up. But that's not what we have right now. We have blanket tariffs on everything. And board game companies are going to suffer. They are going to not be able to produce product or produce product that they sell at a loss. Or they just have to put everything on hold. We're not going to produce stuff. We're just going to put it aside, put it in storage. Okay, and we'll revisit the topic later. Maybe the tariffs will go away and then suddenly we can ship stuff. Who knows? Right? There's no long-term plan for what we are trying to achieve and the steps we're going to take to try to achieve it. If you make a business plan, you're looking at many years. Are we doing that in the U.S. administration? Do we have that plan that we're going to work towards that is going to involve some measure of financial measures, right? Low interest rates for these specific industries, or education in particular universities or schools or whatever it is to train people to move into these industries in the future. You want a long-term effort that is progressing people towards some goal rather than just whatever. At least, again, this is what I think. If you want to make something happen, you need to plan for it and then put those plans into effect and not just change things on whim. Because no one's going to start a business if they think that business could just be worthless in 6 months. I mean, you shouldn't start a business in that situation. So all of this, again, I go back to Bohnanza. From this simple game, you can learn so much from basic principles of trading. And obviously, international trading is far more complex than a game of Bohnanza, but you can understand that there's different levels of fairness, right? What satisfies the buyer and the seller together? And if they both agree to it, and that's been the case for thousands of businesses, tens of thousands, over decades, why is that wrong? Why don't we just operate that way and we focus on other industries and build other businesses? I mean, by all measures that I've seen, the United States has the most successful economy in the world. Again, I could be deluded. American exceptionalism runs rampant through all sorts of things that do not apply. But in general, the U.S. economy is good, right? In general, it recovered a lot faster from COVID than many other countries around the world. The U.S. dollar is the default standard of currency for many places in the world. Local currencies will be judged against the dollar. And so that's because consistently the United States economy has been trustworthy enough that we can do that the dollar becomes that standard. So why are we throwing that all away? What are we trying to gain from that? Obviously, the economy is not great for everyone, right? That's due more to standards of inequality that are outside the scope of this video. We can get way more political if you want. I would recommend instead watching Gary Stevenson's videos on YouTube under Gary's Economics, talking about how inequality has had various negative impacts on countries, including the United States, but others as well, where money shifts up to a certain few people and everyone else just fights for what's left. So that's my political aside within the political discussion here. Again, go back to Bohnanza, right? Simple trading rules. We understand what's fair and we can operate this way. This feels like a more sophisticated approach to trading than what we're seeing from the current U.S. administration, which is astounding to think about. Games are supposed to be abstractions and simplifications of real-world principles, or at least they are often, lots of times, that, simplifications of something that you find in the real world. But this seems like a more sophisticated trading system, a better way for you to learn about trading and how it can work. will work long term. If you make bad deals with someone, they give you something and you never give them anything back, even when you could, they're like, no. We've got to do a trade 1-to-1. I don't care that you gave me something before. We got to trade now. And they will learn, okay, don't give this person anything else in this game and every game in the future. I don't trust them. They're not going to be true to their word. They're not going to hold up to what they say. That's what you learn in games all the time. Can you trust the people that you're dealing with? And if not, you don't want to play with them. So you'll go your own way. Maybe you'll just trade with everyone else but them, and that person will just tank. They will come in last because no one wants to trade with them, and they just have to deal with whatever they're randomly dealt, instead of being able to specialize in the things that they're good at and that will be most profitable for them because they can specialize. Ugh. So many lessons. From Bohnanza, a fantastic card game by Uwe Rosenberg that I have bought in many editions over the years, used and new, because I love this game so much. It's so great to play with new people, and I highly recommend Bohnanza for anyone who would like to sample trading and learn what it's like.